March 15th, 2008, 2:30 in the afternoon. That's when Dr. Morrison looked me straight in the eye and said the words that nearly killed me. "Harold, you're 75 now. Time to accept reality. No more heavy lifting, no more projects. Your heart can't handle the stress anymore." I sat in that sterile office, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and nodded like a good patient, like a fool. That was the beginning of the worst year of my life, and the best decision I never made. You see, I'd been going to doctors for 6 months. Started with chest tightness when I was working on my '67 Mustang in the garage. Nothing serious, just a little squeeze when I'd lift the engine block. But my wife Margaret insisted I get it checked. "Better safe than sorry," she said. So I went. First mistake. Dr. Morrison ran every test you can imagine. EKG, stress test, blood work, chest x-rays. Everything came back the same. Mild cardiac insufficiency. That's doctor talk for your heart's getting old. His prescription was simple. Stop everything. No more restoration projects, no more weekend work at my brother's construction company, no more splitting firewood for the winter. Take it easy, Harold. Enjoy your retirement. Easy for him to say. He was 45 and spent his days sitting in air conditioning. I'd been working with my hands for 57 years. Started as an apprentice electrician when I was 18, right out of high school. Built half the houses in our county, fixed more cars than I can count. My hands knew the weight of tools like other men know the weight of their wallets. But I listened. God help me, I listened. I put away my wrenches, covered up the Mustang, told my brother I couldn't help with the Henderson barn anymore. For the first time in my adult life, my garage fell silent. Margaret was relieved. She'd been worried about me for years, watching me climb ladders and crawl under cars. "Now we can travel," she said. "Take those cruises we always talked about." But here's what nobody tells you about stopping. Your body doesn't thank you for it. It betrays you. Within 3 months, I couldn't climb our stairs without getting winded. My hands started shaking from lack of use. My back, which had been strong from decades of lifting, began to ache from sitting in recliners and watching television. I felt like I was disappearing. The man who could wire a house in 2 days couldn't change a light bulb without feeling dizzy. I went back to Dr. Morrison, told him I was getting worse, not better. He ran more tests, prescribed more rest. "This is normal, Harold. Aging is a gradual process. Your body is adjusting." Adjusting to what? Giving up? I started having what Margaret called episodes. Times when I'd just sit in my chair and stare at the wall for hours. She thought it was depression. Maybe it was, but it felt deeper than that. It felt like dying while still breathing. The worst part was watching other people my age who hadn't gotten the memo about slowing down. My neighbour Eddie, 78, still mowed his 3-acre lawn every week. My cousin Frank, 81, was building a deck for his daughter. They seemed fine. More than fine. They seemed alive. I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you're still here, maybe you understand what I'm talking about. Subscribe if you want to hear the rest. By January 2009, I was taking 5 different medications. Blood pressure pills, heart pills, pills for the side effects of other pills. I was 76 and felt like I was 96. Margaret would find me sitting in the garage sometimes, just staring at my covered tools. "What are you thinking about?" she'd ask. I never told her the truth. I was thinking about dying. Not suicide, nothing dramatic like that, just fading away. Becoming one of those old men you see shuffled into nursing homes, blank-eyed and forgotten. Then something happened that changed everything. My grandson Jake, 16 at the time, came to stay with us for spring break. His parents were going through a rough divorce, and he needed somewhere stable to land for a week. Jake had always been different from other kids. While his friends were playing video games, he was taking apart radios and putting them back together. Reminded me of myself at that age. On his second day with us, Jake asked if he could see my workshop. Margaret shot me a warning look, but I couldn't say no. We walked into the garage together, and I pulled the tarp off my workbench for the first time in months. Jake's eyes went wide. "Grandpa, this is incredible! You built all this?" I nodded. 40 years of collected tools, organised drawers, projects in various stages of completion. It was my life's work, covered in dust. Jake picked up my favourite wrench, a Craftsman I'd owned since 1971. "Can you teach me how to use these?" That question hit me like a physical blow. Here was this kid, hungry to learn, and I was supposed to tell him his grandfather was too old to teach him? Too sick? Too fragile? I looked at Jake holding that wrench, and something inside me snapped. Not broke, snapped awake. "Yeah," I said, "I can teach you." Margaret wasn't happy. She reminded me what Dr. Morrison had said about stress and strain. But Jake was only there for a week, and I promised to take it easy. We started small. I showed him how to change the oil in my old pickup truck. Then we moved to basic electrical work, rewiring a lamp from the house. Each day Jake learned something new, and each day I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Useful. By the end of the week, we'd rebuilt the carburettor on my lawnmower and fixed a broken ceiling fan. Nothing major, nothing that should have required a hospital stay. But here's the thing about work, real work with your hands. It doesn't just exercise your muscles, it exercises your mind, your purpose, your reason for getting up in the morning. When Jake left, he hugged me harder than he ever had. "Thanks for teaching me, Grandpa. You're the coolest old guy I know." After he was gone, I stood in the garage, looking at the tools we'd used, still scattered on the workbench, and I made a decision that Dr. Morrison would have called reckless. I was going to finish the Mustang. Margaret tried to talk me out of it. She called Dr. Morrison, who scheduled an immediate appointment to reassess my condition. He wasn't pleased. My blood pressure was slightly elevated, probably from the excitement of working again. He increased my medication and gave me the lecture about stress and cardiac events. "Harold, I understand you want to feel productive, but there are safer ways to stay busy. Have you considered crossword puzzles? Light gardening?" Crossword puzzles, for a man who'd built houses. I nodded and told him I'd think about it, but I'd already made my choice. The next morning I uncovered the Mustang completely. She was a 1967 fastback, candy apple red, that I'd bought as a rust bucket in 1995. I'd been working on her for years, planning to surprise Margaret with a restored classic for our 50th anniversary. Now she was 90% complete, sitting under a tarp, waiting to die like I was. I read something that changed everything. It said, "Patience after 60 is the fastest way to die forgotten." My doctor said, "Wait." I stopped waiting. That guide is in the description below. I started working on the car every morning at 7 a.m. Small sessions at first, maybe an hour. I'd replace a gasket, adjust the timing, clean the chrome. Nothing too strenuous, but enough to feel the familiar rhythm of meaningful work. Margaret watched from the kitchen window, probably calculating how long it would take the ambulance to reach our house. But something strange happened. Instead of getting weaker, I started getting stronger. My hands stopped shaking. My breathing improved. The chronic back pain that had plagued me since retiring began to fade. Within a month, I was working 3-hour sessions. Within 2 months, I was under that car, flat on my back, installing a new exhaust system like I was 50 again. Dr. Morrison was baffled. At my next appointment, my blood pressure was lower than it had been in 2 years. My EKG showed improvement. He ran the same tests that had convinced him I needed to slow down, and now they showed a stronger, healthier heart. "I don't understand it," he admitted. "By all accounts, you should be in worse condition, not better." I wanted to explain it to him, but I don't think he would have understood. Work isn't just activity, it's purpose, and purpose is medicine that no pharmacy can stock. I finished the Mustang in October 2009. Margaret's face when I drove her around the block for the first time. That was worth every moment of doubt, every concerned lecture, every pill I'd stopped taking. We drove to our anniversary dinner in that car. 50 years of marriage celebrated in a vehicle I'd built with my own hands at 76 years old. Dr. Morrison retired in 2012. Never did figure out why his dying patient was outliving his predictions. His replacement, Dr. Chen, had a different philosophy. When I told her about the car, about continuing to work with my hands, she smiled. "Harold, the human body is designed for use, not rest. Keep doing what you're doing." I'm 92 now, still working in my garage every day. Last month I helped Jake, now 31, rebuild the engine on his truck. We spent 3 days together, grandfather and grandson, covered in grease and completely happy. Margaret teases me that I'll probably die under the hood of some car, wrench in my hand. I always tell her there are worse ways to go. The chest tightness that started this whole journey? Gone. Completely. Turns out it wasn't my heart warning me to slow down. It was my heart warning me that I was already slowing down too much. The human body craves challenge, demands purpose, requires the satisfaction that comes from building, fixing, creating something with your own hands. Dr. Morrison meant well, they all do, but they see aging as a disease to be managed, not a stage of life to be lived. They see risk in every activity, danger in every exertion. What they miss is the greater risk of doing nothing, of accepting decline as inevitable, of choosing safety over meaning. Everything I learned about patience, about sacrifice, about trust, it's all in something called the 60-year rule. 9 rules that reverse after 60. I wish someone had given me this 20 years ago. The link is right below this video. I've had 16 additional years of active, meaningful life because I ignored medical advice and listened to my grandson's question instead. "Can you teach me how to use these?" That question saved my life, not because it made me immortal, but because it made me remember that I was still alive. Some people will tell you that wisdom comes with age. That's backwards. Age comes to those who pursue wisdom. And wisdom, real wisdom, comes from understanding that the most dangerous thing you can do after 75 isn't taking risks. It's stopping taking them altogether. The doctors were wrong about slowing down. Dead wrong. And I've got 16 years of proof sitting in my driveway, purring like the day she rolled off the assembly line in Detroit. Every morning I walk into this garage, pick up my tools, and remember what Dr. Morrison never understood. A man doesn't age because his body gets older. A man ages when he stops using his body to do the things that make him feel alive. I'm 92 and I'm just getting started.